Stepping out of a conference, Millionaire crypto founder Michael Terpin was immediately sent into a panic because on the other side of the country, a group of teenage boys were working with bribed telecom employees to hijack his phone number, and now they were hacking every account he had ever created. Sitting in a Skype call, the kids launched scripts to comb through every email he ever sent, look at every picture he ever took, check every file he ever uploaded, hoping to find a way into his crypto wallets. God forbid any of their moms knock on their doors now. One of their scripts returned a hit, jackpot. Popping open the account, 900 million USD in Ethereum was staring at the boys. Holy shit, Alice Pinsky, the 15-year-old ringleader, thought. However, they couldn't touch it. The account required an additional password. All they could do now was keep searching. It was a desperate race against time. Within a matter of hours, Michael was back in. Heart pounding, he checked his largest crypto account and sighed with relief upon finding it untouched. Working his way down, however, Turpin's heart sank as he realized 24 million had vanished.
They were able, with the number of people they had, to kind of drain just about everything I had.
I took $1 million loss.
I knew immediately that I was being SIM swapped.
Pinsky was over the moon. He had just hit the biggest SIM swapping case in history and was now a multi-millionaire before he could even legally open a bank account. Purchased a $100,000 watch and hid it under his bed. But there was a problem. Another kid who he recruited to help sell off the stolen funds had snatched $1.5 million. And now, Pinsky's accomplice wanted to hire a hitman to have him killed. This is the story of how a couple Xbox shit talkers became most wanted cyber criminals, stealing tens of millions of dollars, but through greed, jealousy, and betrayals, their empires would fall apart before any of them could legally drive. He was so smart, it was stupid, is what classmates would say about 13-year-old Alice Pinsky. Growing up in New York City, he enjoyed playing video games, soccer, and even chess, but he really only had one wish. See, his personal life wasn't easy. He lived in a cramped apartment in Manhattan. His mother, a single woman with 3 young boys, worked extra hours to support the family. And after 13 years of sharing a single space with his siblings, Alice would finally get his dream. His mother's overtime paid off. Her savings were enough to buy a nice 2-story house in Irvington, a small town an hour away from New York City. And when mom took young Ellis to show him his own spacious room with painted blue walls, he was mesmerized. But one thing caught his attention the most: a TV standing in the corner with a shiny new Xbox One. He quickly booted up the console and saw a game, Call of Duty Ghost. He would spend his nights playing, learning tricks to dominate lobbies, but that made him good at something else: the art of trash talking.
You can't play this game, man. Get out of the tank and then let's see who wins. I'm like #1 in support, so I'll kill you.
Yeah, he was a 13-year-old squeaker on Xbox Live. Better times. But little did he know that just one match would soon change the course of his life forever. See, during one of those late night COD matches, Ellis got into another heated trash talking battle, and after saying everything you should never say to somebody, the other player posed a question: how's the weather in Irvington? Ellis immediately logged off and sat in front of the main menu. Someone out there knew where he lived, but he got curious. How could a stranger on the internet know his location? And after asking around, another player revealed to him a free program called Wireshark. It allowed users to sniff out any person's incoming network connection and identify their IP address. Then they could put that into an IP to location tool, and there you have it, the approximate address of the person you want to scare. How convenient. Ellis recalls this moment. That's when it clicked. If someone can do it against me, I can wield this power too. The internet hides so many secrets. All I have to do is uncover them. Soon, the world would discover how a teenager's curiosity can lead to becoming the biggest SIM swapping hacker in history. But for Ellis, it was all still just a game. Not really knowing where to start, he began asking everyone on Xbox Live until one of his COD teammates revealed that he knew a thing or two about hacking and could teach Ellis. You remember that social security date of birth website I was talking about in my video on Julius Kivamaki? Yeah, this kid taught him how to extract someone's personal information using sketchy websites. And kids were using this stuff to basically recover accounts and commit like minor fraud, petty theft, take over a game account, sell the gold, whatever. And Ellis was all ears, loved it, didn't care about the morality, but he still wanted to know more advanced methods, wasn't content stopping here, which led him to find and join one of the scammiest forums on the internet, OG users. And it's here that everything would go completely wrong. I've talked about this forum so much in my videos. You know, if you take a peek at the website, it just looks like a normal, regular marketplace where users can buy, sell, or exchange social media accounts with unique usernames, some going for thousands of dollars. As you probably know, OG Users has been home to major controversies and scams in recent years, but Ellis had joined at its peak before any of the members had got busted and likewise fled the site. Today the forum is a shell of its former self, but back then it was truly the Wild West and kind of this hidden conglomerate. They called it the community. It was the comm. It was the scene. So all these kids were hanging out and nobody was watching them yet. So the account names you see on the forum are stolen from their original owners. OG Users offered Pinsky something he desired, a forum full of hackers scheming up new methods to break into accounts. He quickly registered under the new persona Pi, and he was hellbent on learning every method that these kids even peeped a whisper about. During the day, he was still a completely normal kid, played football, talked with friends, but when he came home, he wasn't doing his homework anymore or even booting up Call of Duty. Instead, he starts to learn SQL and cross-site scripting. Some of you know what that's used for, don't you? Well, kids on the forum were sharing methods they used to attack companies' databases using SQL injection attacks, which allowed them to extract terabytes of precious information, the kind OG user members were interested in purchasing. You know, in my video on Joel Ortiz, members used this sort of attack to extract private emails from Instagram, helping them steal countless rare usernames. And Ellis turned out to be quite good at this stuff, slowly progressed from hacking smaller, less secure websites to targeting more and more complex websites with advanced defense systems. After a successful raid, he would sell the data for thousands of dollars to interested buyers, and what they did with it was none of his concern. Within less than a year, he had become infamous on the forum, and it's at this point that he starts teaming up with other members to breach companies that held information they believed will be immensely valuable. But it was getting boring. Turns out cool Instagram handles didn't impress the girls at school, but what if there was a new way to hack into accounts that could net millions of dollars? Wouldn't that be a blast? Welcome to 2016. Wired had just published an article about Obama's new cybersecurity plan. In this paper, he talked about the importance of enabling two-factor authentication and, more importantly, clicking that subscribe button so I can unlock the final tier of creator support. This is a real thing. We gotta hit 1 million subscribers. It's a lofty goal, but seriously, thank you. So two-factor obviously would be an attempt at making accounts safer, which, don't get me wrong, it is, and you should always use it, but not text message-based two-factor authentication, because these little shits, well, they found the one simple factor that the paper didn't take into consideration, the human one. In fact, these kids found that they could get around text message-based 2FA and even use it to their advantage by creating a new method called SIM swapping. So, you know how you can roll up to a telecom store, tell them you bought a new phone, and they'll swap your phone number over to it? Well, kids on OG Users found that they could persuade or deceive employees from wireless carriers to remotely switch a SIM card from a target's phone to one they controlled. And think about how easy this is. With the phone number in their control, all they had to do was hit the reset password button, enter the confirmation code, and they're in. And once you've got access to someone's primary email account, well, you can reset passwords for all of their accounts. For the OG users, this was a game changer. Now, all they needed to hack into a cool username was to find out the email and phone number associated with an account. Then it'd be as simple as hitting that reset password button. And for Ellis, he was one of the first to learn this new technique. But instead of deceiving employees with fake IDs and social insurance numbers, he decided to persuade them with money. His offer would be simple. Help me SIM swap specific phone numbers in exchange for a few $100. No questions asked. Not everyone agreed, but if you were an underpaid short-term contract employee, it was a very enticing offer. Shit, some of these insiders were even members of the forum. And so, with his breached database earnings, Ellis had employees at every major carrier working for him, a 14-year-old boy.
Finley, how's it going, man? Fox LA, can we talk to you real quick about SIM swapping?
No.
You used to work at Verizon, right? You're accused of taking bribes to help out SIM swappers?
I have no comment.
No comment? Nothing to say, sir? You didn't take a $3,500 bribe to help SIM swappers?
With his newfound network, he was slowly climbing his ranks up the SIM swapping world. The attacks were now becoming routine for him, earning a sizable income, but nothing too crazy. That's until the beginning of January 2018, when crypto started picking up again, and some shady people on OG Users had a new idea that could net them millions, instead of a couple thousand, by taking over rare usernames. The target from here on out would be large crypto holders. It's in early 2018 that Ellis received a private message on the forum from a user called Harry. He had a very simple question. Hey man, could you hack an AT&T phone? I have a target I think is good. The name of that target was Michael Terpin, an established crypto entrepreneur with hundreds of millions stashed in various cryptocurrency exchanges, waiting patiently to be stolen. Ellis was not used to hacking crypto accounts nor such large amounts of money, but there was no way he was about to say no to this offer. Speaking about offers, Incogni is the sponsor of this video. The big question is, how did they get Michael's email address and phone number? Sometimes it was through these private data breaches kids like Ellis were finding and selling. Other times it was websites like SSN-DOB that we were talking about earlier. Or for someone like Michael, who lived in the US, there's just these websites that sell personal information. People finder tools that you can search someone's name and then find their address, phone numbers, employment status. I mean, just a long list of stuff. And this is a whole industry. Data brokers, essentially doing what Ellis was doing that feels very wrong, but legally. And there's a good chance that they have your data. Actually, there's a good chance hundreds of these brokers have your data. You know that SSN-DOB website? One of the primary ways they got data was by hacking data aggregators. Those are companies that buy from a bunch of data brokers, then put it all together into a more complete picture of who you are to resell to more advertisers, more marketers, like whatever. By hacking aggregators, they had a direct siphon to billions of people's information, and it was all up for sale for nefarious purposes. Worse, these brokers get hacked like this all the time. That's why I'm glad Incogni is the sponsor of this video. Look, you might not have millions of dollars to steal, but if you're like me, you already get daily spam phone calls and emails. On top of that, people can use this information to steal your identity, open bank accounts, send phishing attacks. If you got old parents like me, they might fall for this stuff. But as soon as I used Incogni, the amount of spam I was getting drastically reduced. That's because the best way to stop this stuff is to have your data removed from these brokers. But there's hundreds of them harvesting and selling your personal information all the time. You basically can't do it on your own. So that's where Incogni comes in. They will automatically contact a definitive list of these companies, then on your behalf send data protection law compliance requests insisting that they remove your information from their databases. And then they'll follow up on those requests and keep insisting. It's kind of neat. You actually get access to a dashboard that will update you in live time with their day-to-day progress of removing your information from these third-party marketing companies and people's search websites. So look, if you don't want super spooky cyber delinquents searching you, you can use my link in the description. When you click that link, it helps support the channel, but you'll also get a big discount, 60% off an annual plan. I use the annual plan because, look, you sign up once, you let the thing run all year, you completely forget about it, and it will continue to take you off these lists as they continue to crop up. So that's incogni.com/crumb. I'm really glad that Incogni exists and that they have supported this video. As you're about to learn, maybe Michael Terpin would have been saved from Ellis and Harry had he used Incogni. Ellis and Harry started scheming over Skype. They made scripts to automate the attack, plotted what crypto accounts they would access and in what order. Everything had to be perfect, because as soon as they swapped the number, Terpin's phone would lose service. And he had been SIM swapped before. Within minutes, he had noticed and start working to regain control. But they were lucky. Had caught news Terpin was going to a crypto conference in Las Vegas. Knowing he would be busy, it would be the perfect time to strike. And so on the evening of January 7th, 2018, 15-year-old Ellis booted up Telegram and sent a message to a corrupt AT&T employee. Had him port Terpin's SIM to a burner phone they controlled. Now talking via Skype, Ellis and Harry reset the password to Terpin's email. They were in. Immediately launched a script to search certain keywords in his email like crypto, coins, and passwords, but nothing came up. Harry felt defeated and wanted to give up, but Ellis didn't listen to him. Instead, he began resetting the passwords to every email account he could find Terpin had ever signed up for. After searching for minutes, he finally found what he was looking for, an email containing the keyword keys. Jackpot. When he opened it, he found passwords to various crypto wallets. Binance, Coinbase, Exodus, you name it. According to Ellis, one of the wallets had $900 million USD in Ethereum. However, he couldn't touch it. The account required an additional password he couldn't find. All he could do now was keep searching. This time, he stumbled upon a counterparty wallet. Using the 12-word seed phrase, he accessed it and found 3 million coins of a cryptocurrency he had never heard of before. His first thought was, well, it's a shitcoin, worth basically nothing. But 3 million of it, let's see what's up. He quickly ran a check on CoinMarketCap that proved him terribly wrong. At the time, one coin was worth just shy of $8. Ellis quickly did the math and discovered that 3 million coins equaled $24 million. It was 10% of the entire Trigger's market cap. For Michael Terpin and Triggers, it was over. But Ellis now had to find a way to cash out as many of these coins as fast as possible. He opened Twitter and posted a call for help, asking if anyone had a Binance account. His followers were mostly the same people he talked to on OG users. 7 of them reached out. One by one, Ellis added them to the call and began sending them Trigger coins to exchange for Bitcoins. Once they did, they would send the coins back to Ellis and Harry, who would in turn leave them a cool tip, a minimum of $20,000 for anyone who helped out. But not everyone would be as cooperative in selling the coins. One of the people who reached out, known by the username Erupts, joined the call and asked Ellis what he was up to. He answered honestly. He needed help converting coins from the $24 million heist into Bitcoin, and his account was greatly needed. Erupts agreed, took $1.5 million, and promised to return it as soon as possible. But then he left the call. 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours passed. He never came back. Harry didn't take very kindly to Erupts' betrayal. He was so angry that he was going to order a hit on Erupts for scamming them. And worse, he knew exactly who Erupts was, Nicholas Truglia from Manhattan. See, Nick wasn't exactly private on social media, posted about his lavish lifestyle, watches, bottle service, in this photo, flaunting his crypto hardware wallet, likely holding millions of dollars in illicit gains, captioned, "Catch me if you can." But Ellis was a lot more level-headed, convinced Harry to leave it, arguing that it would be too much. After all, they had still made a good chunk of cash. Why increase their risk of getting caught? Yet, sometime later, Ellis would actually become friends with Truglia, partying in his luxury Manhattan apartment, but that was still a little ways out. By the time Ellis and Harry split their loot, they had walked away with close to $10 million each. Ellis had taken a little more for his technical work, exactly 562 Bitcoins. Now a multi-millionaire, Ellis closed the call and turned off his computer. The rush quickly fell off, and by the time he went to bed, he felt nothing special. For him, it was just a regular hack, like taking over an Instagram username or dumping a database. Yet, this would actually mark the largest SIM swap recorded in history done by an individual. And unknown to authorities, a 15-year-old Call of Duty shit talker was the culprit. But soon, Ellis would discover just how big of a mistake he had made in a short-lived hacking career. Once Terpin managed to regain control, he checked his wallet. 24 million, gone in the blink of an eye, scattered across a slew of accounts he couldn't trace. He felt devastated, but wasn't surprised. This was the second time he got SIM swapped, after all.
Terpin is also suing AT&T in federal court. He says after he was SIM swapped in 2017, he upgraded to AT&T's higher security and was still SIM swapped a second time. He claims AT&T employees are culpable and the company needs to be held accountable.
We believe that, they are as responsible as the criminals.
This is why you don't steal from rich people. They've got the funds to sue and hunt down everybody involved. He was certainly kicking up a storm, and it would really help because after announcing his lawsuit and writing posts about the scam, he got a message on LinkedIn. It was a reporter from Reuters. He asked for a simple interview about what happened. And after publishing, dozens of news outlets contacted Michael for a comment. Then Fox 11 ran an investigation into Verizon workers who had allegedly helped hackers to SIM swap their victims. SIM swapping as a phenomenon was becoming more popular than ever. And now, for the first time ever, kids were getting caught.
Erin West serves as Deputy District Attorney in Santa Clara County. She works hand in hand with the React Task Force to hunt down and imprison SIM swappers, and she secured the first ever conviction of a SIM swapper this year.
He was driving a $500,000 car that he had bought with Bitcoin.
I made an entire video on this guy. It'll be linked at the end of this one. The more people talked about this, the closer Michael felt he was to the hackers. And he was right, because Michael got a call from a man that introduced himself as Chris David. And he had something really important to tell Michael. A month after Terpin sued AT&T, 20-year-old Nicholas Truglia was at home in his luxury New York City apartment. He had just texted David that he wanted to go out. They met up with 3 others, started the night at a sports bar, and then, as was custom, made their way to a high-end nightclub. By 3 a.m., Nick was so intoxicated, the group of 5 went back to his apartment to wrangle him to bed. But when they got there, Nick started acting crazy, lit a candle on fire, and was now using it as a weapon. David was dozing at this point. He had too much to drink himself, but he remembers Nick confronting one of the guests and shouting that everyone should leave. Nick had apparently hacked this person's phone by means of a SIM swap, and that was the reason for this fight. As David stumbled out, Nick handed him his computer, urged him to take it. When Nick woke up, with a cut lip and blood on his couch, hardly able to remember the night before, he called the cops. Reported his laptop was missing, along with some hardware wallets. These are electronic devices that store cryptocurrency. Still nursing a hangover and with the cops still in Nick's apartment, David finally mustered up the strength to go and return the laptop. He lived in the same building as Nick after all. Actually, Nick had approached David for the first time nearly 6 months earlier in the tower's fitness center, recognized David as a private jet broker, introduced himself as a crypto miner, and simply asked if booking a jet flight with crypto was possible. And so David met up later at his apartment and the two discussed opportunities for him to use private jets to fly to Miami over the 4th of July weekend. Thus, a friendship was born. Nick often used David's services and later started going with him everywheres, to nightclubs, local bars, the gym, you name it. But now, it had gone sour. When David walked through that door with Nick's laptop, he was greeted by 8 police officers. They asked him all sorts of questions about the night before. When they finally left, he thought that was it. The two played video games for hours. David even purchased Nick some food because, of course, Nick had lost his wallet during that crazy night. But over the weekend, he caught wind that Nick was now alleging him and the others had assaulted him that night in order to steal cryptocurrency off of his computer and was now planning to sue them. He didn't know if Nick was trying to set him up or what, but David wasn't about to get caught up in this mess. So before the weekend could even end, he went back over to Nick's to hang out, but really, he was secretly recording their conversation, hoping that Nick would admit that he had done nothing wrong. Except during the course of that conversation, he would record much more damning evidence. But this wasn't the first time David was hearing about it. He had long suspected Nick didn't earn his millions from crypto mining. In fact, he had been compiling evidence of his crimes for some time, worried the day might come where his affiliation would be brought into question. See, when the two first met, Nick just couldn't shut up, always bragged about his money. After inquiring to book a jet for $38,000, he showed David his JP Morgan account, which had $7 million in cash, then a crypto wallet with over $12 million. Crypto mining seemed to pay Nick well. He could afford to live a lavish lifestyle, a $6,000 a month apartment, a $100,000 Rolex that never left his wrist, and plans to purchase a $250,000 sports car. Yet, day to day, he lived like a complete degenerate. Woke up late, exclusively ate takeout, played video games late into the night, rinse and repeat every single day. Except for Sundays. David couldn't get a hold of Nick on Sundays. He was always busy. After one Sunday, Nick would show David 2 thumb drives, one containing 20 million and the other 40 million, all in crypto. He knew there was no way Nick crypto mined that. And sometimes, Nick would drop some information that he shouldn't have. One time, he said he stole $15,000 from his dad via SIM swapping. He later returned the money in bitcoins. David managed to get this picture of his dad asking how to sell them. Why steal from his dad when he had over $70 million, he thought. But things got even stranger. He found out Nick didn't have a driver's license, at least a legal one. Nick's license belonged to a deceased man named Quentin Capobianco, with his own photo on the license. It turns out Nick had SIM swapped the deceased man's phone to gain access to his Coinbase account, but got prompted to provide an ID held up next to his face before he could withdraw the funds. Likewise, he had this made and now assumed it as an identity. Then, one night, David noticed Nick made a series of tweets, each one starting with, "Stole $24 million, then followed by some depressing statement. The most telling are, "Stole 24 million, still can't stop stealing," and "Stole 24 million, still can't keep a friend." He had told David everything short of an outright confession, and David had secretly been compiling all of it. But now, months into their friendship, it had all come to a head. Standing in Nick's living room, secretly recording, David asked Nick for the first time point blank about his assault allegations. Nick admitted it wasn't true, apologized, and now, speaking frankly, David went on to ask point blank, for the first time, how he actually made his money. Over the course of 58 minutes, Nick told David everything, and he had it all saved. But the next morning, before he would even have a chance to share it with authorities, Nick had sent him a message, asked if he could bring $50 down to his apartment for food. His wallet was still missing, after all. Except, it was a trap. When he arrived, the police were waiting. They arrested David for stealing Nick's laptop and allegedly stealing his cryptocurrency, and he spent the night in jail. This was the final nail in the coffin. David was going to make sure Nick got locked up and for good by sharing everything with Michael, including footage of Nick at an AT&T store trying to perform SIM swaps. Unbeknownst to Ellis, this was really, really bad news. By this time, 8 months had passed since the hack, and Ellis had more or less returned to normal life. At first, he expected the FBI to bust in at any second, but over time, his anxiety faded. He bought a luxury watch and took out $100,000 in cash, which he hid under his bed in a cheap safe. It's funny, being physical, this feels like an extreme, but the real loot, tens of millions of dollars in crypto, was saved on his computer in the same room. And besides spending $900 to jump on an empty leg flight back from Chicago with his mom, Ellis didn't think too much about his money. It wasn't even his motivation in the first place. He had wanted to win the game, and now he had, but at the same time, he had taken so many small steps that he was now a full-blown criminal, and he was done with that life. Hoped if he stopped now, it wouldn't catch up. Instead, he shifted his attention back to different types of programming, found joy in writing sneaker-bot scripts to snap up limited pairs of shoes, and that made him some legitimate cash he felt comfortable spending. He was also developing more of a social life, started hanging out with girls for the first time, and was focusing more than ever on soccer. Things were going really well. Then, out of the blue, he got a message from @Erupts, the hacker who Ellis's partner wanted to have killed, the hacker who had disappeared with the $1.5 million from the Terpin job. Ellis already knew Erupts to be Nicholas Truglia. Truglia, living in Manhattan, was just a skip and a hop away from Irvington, and now he wanted to take Ellis out for a night on the city. Nick seemed to be impressed by his capabilities, was either looking to collaborate on future schemes or rob him. Ellis thought of it all. He was very weary about this meetup, but after much persistence, he eventually agreed to go. And so on a Friday night, Ellis and a friend from school took a metro ride into the city to meet up. It was an epic night. Nick had booked models to meet up with them, though he had never admitted. They went to the Up and Down Club where Rich the Kid was performing. And by the time Nick threw down his platinum Amex card and $2,000 bottles of Dom Perignon started flowing, sitting in the VIP area surrounded by women, Pinsky could tell by the look on his friend's face that this moment was meant to be epic, that they would forever be legends at Irvington High School for managing to pull this off. They sent Snapchats to make sure that all their friends would know. But Ellis would go on to say that this wasn't as great of a night as it looked. He felt strange hanging out with adults, and it made him uncomfortable that people in Truglia's circle seemed to be familiar with who he was. By 6 a.m., Ellis and his friend had Ubered home, each of them telling their parents that they had cut the sleepover short. Classic. But in the end, this brief friendship with Nick would turn out to have not been a very good idea. As you know, Nick had been reckless for a very long time, and now more than ever, Pinsky was directly tied to that coming wake. When Michael Terpin picked up the phone, Chris David began by telling him everything that had happened. On the recording, Nick had admitted to hacking Terpin for $24 million with 2 accomplices. It was strange. Those tweets he made about stealing $24 million were, of course, also about the Terpin hack, but as you know, he wasn't actually involved, well, besides stealing the money from Ellis and Harry after the fact. And I'm not sure why. I think it's that Nick thought this stuff was so cool that, like, even if he wasn't involved with a high-profile case, he still wanted to claim that he was. He went on to confess to David that the $70 million he had seen was completely obtained through hacking, and he even arrogantly claimed that he would never be caught because his skills were too good. On this recording, Dude even likened himself to a Robin Hood figure, stealing from the rich, except instead of giving to the poor, he would give to himself. And again, he mentioned that Terpin was his biggest hack. Remember, the Terpin case, literally the largest SIM swapping case of an individual at this time. This was a bad idea because David immediately recognized the significance of what was being discussed because he had seen Terpin on the news talking about this. And likewise, that's why he was now on a phone call with him. Shocked, Michael asked David if he had any tangible evidence. David confirmed that he had been secretly recording everything. Chat logs, phone calls, screenshots, all stored in a Dropbox ready to be shared with Michael. He would even go on to prepare a statement of facts with a lawyer, including all of this evidence. This document even included photos of Nick attempting to manipulate an AT&T employee into SIM swapping a phone number while David was with him. Dude was caught red-handed.
We immediately went to the FBI and to Secret Service and to various different groups. And we also you have to do your own research too, because they take their own time. And I hired a very good lawyer. And also just once the first person got arrested, I started getting tips from other people in the gang who wanted to, roll on one on the other and give us clues and things like that. So every weekend, my phone would light up from people who allegedly were best buddies of the criminals, but they're not criminals themselves, and would give us information. So
one of these kids that called was Joseph O'Connor, aka Plugwalk Joe, the teenager that couldn't stop hacking celebrities, but that's a video for another day. Make sure you subscribe. And he had something really important to tell Terpin. Said that the person he should be after wasn't Truglia. The real culprit was someone named Pi, a feared figure who had been professionally hacking since he was in puberty. Later that night, O'Connor texted Terpin a name and hometown, Ellis Pinsky, Irvington. Now, Michael had everything he needed to make a case, but before he could even get started, Homeland Security had already caught up with Truglia all on their own. They were after him because, well, they found he was involved with 6 other SIM swapping cases. Around 8 a.m., way earlier than Nick would ever wake up, there was a pounding at his door. At first, he thought he was being swatted by someone online, but by the time they had him in handcuffs, he knew the jig was up. A month prior, he had stolen $1 million from Rob Ross. And Rob got on the news.
I had $1 million stolen that night. It included my daughter's college fund, my retirement.
This was his 6th known victim. See, Nick had targeted a few people in California, and that's where the React Task Force is located. Those are agents that are specialized in computer crime, and the first thing they did upon getting these reports that millions of dollars had gone missing was trace the blockchain to see where the stolen coins were sent. They found amounts being cashed out on Coinbase, and likewise sent a subpoena to the exchange. What they got back was this picture that Nick had used to register. Rookie mistake number 1, don't sell your stolen funds on your personal account that you've submitted a photo of yourself holding up your ID to. If you think this is comical, it gets a lot worse. I said it before, Nick had been reckless for a very long time. After arresting him, they combed through his belongings and they went as far as to digging into his iCloud backup. Inside, they found some proof related to Michael Terpin's case. Chat logs revealing Truglia's exhilarating confessions on the date of the hack. Quote, "Today my life changed forever. I'm a millionaire. I'm not kidding. I have 100 Bitcoins." Along with conversations to his friends about hiring escorts and treating them all to a trip to the Super Bowl. Furthermore, they found a hard drive containing $300,000 worth of crypto, but the vast majority of his illicit gains were nowhere to be found, and tracking them down was going to prove challenging. He was sent to Elmwood Correctional Facility, and now Aaron West, the deputy district attorney, faced the easy job of building a compelling case against him to make sure he would stay locked up for good, and more importantly, get restitution for the victims. And when I say easy, I mean it. Like, check this out. Nick had actually got on a Vice documentary.
It really wouldn't be that many years. It's not like murder. It's really just like a decade at most is what people look at. And then even then I would still have my money when I got out because it's Bitcoin. It's not like a bank account. They can't take the money. I mean, obviously it would suck to go to jail for a decade, but the way I have everything set up, I don't think that'll happen.
This is him. He obviously asked them to keep him anonymous, but they put him in the credits with his real name. You can't make this up. Aaron was charging him with 21 felony counts, but surprisingly, none of these were related to the hack of Michael Terpin. It was all other victims. They hadn't caught him on that yet. And so come April 2019, Michael filed a civil suit against Nick under the RICO Act. This law was invented to prosecute mobsters. Quite unusual to see it brought up, but look, Michael was spending millions of dollars on lawyers, so they were pulling every string. In the suit, Terpin sought $75.8 million since the act allows victims to recover triple the damages. And come May, a jury actually awarded Terpin that judgment, but this was going to be really hard to collect, especially before he had been sentenced. And that was going to take some time. There was also a question of, well, Truglia didn't steal the entire amount to begin with, and well, by this time, Michael knew that because, well, he had contacted Pinsky's mom. Shortly after Christmas 2018, his mom received an email from one of Terpin's lawyers. She read it and asked Ellis about the situation. He explained everything, from Call of Duty to OG users, Harry, Terpin, the cash and watch under his bed, Truglia, and their meeting in Manhattan. Ellis had been more discreet than Truglia, but now his case had allowed Terpin's lawyers to build a complete picture. The email was accusing Ellis of being the ringleader. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Ellis wanted to resolve it. He wasn't prepared for jail, and so with the help of a lawyer, he returned everything he had stolen. He hadn't really spent any of the crypto, which helped. He hoped that his actions would be seen as a gesture of goodwill, but it was going to be much more complicated than that. In the meantime, 7 months since the RICO judgment and still yet to see a penny, Terpin finally got the news he had been waiting for. Truglia was being charged with wire fraud following the FBI's investigation into him using his Binance account to sell Terpin's stolen coins. But these charges were coming out of New York, and he was still currently locked up in California. Amazingly, he was granted bail, but just days after getting out, he was arrested and arraigned on these new charges. For Terpin, justice finally seemed close. But then, the New York judge ruled that Truglia could await his federal wire fraud trial under house arrest at his father's upscale gated community home in Orlando. The only condition was that he had to stay home and he had to stay off the internet. Remember, at this point, they still hadn't found all of the stolen money, and so now he had an opportunity to better hide those assets. Yet, despite being banned from using the internet, Nick just couldn't stay offline. These videos were being posted on YouTube of him sitting in Discord calls with an ankle monitor on.
Why? What is wrong?
Then OG user members saw that he was posting on Instagram. By this time, he was seen as a rat in the community. He had been, more or less cooperating with the FBI in some circumstances. So they swatted his dad's house at least a dozen times. And come December 2021, police officers on one of their visits found laptops, iPhones, and 7 grams of cocaine. Truglia tried to say it all belonged to a friend, but the judge didn't buy it. Sent him back to jail, this time in New Jersey to await sentencing. Come December 1st, 2022, it was finally time to face the music. Truglia was facing 51 to 63 months under sentencing guidelines. He made a plea bargain, pled guilty to the wire fraud charges against Michael, even admitted in court how it was done. He let Ellis and Harry on his Binance account, then reset the password to kick them off once they had put money on it to sell. During the sentencing hearing, it had emerged that Truglia had more than $53 million worth of assets. That's crypto, art, jewelry. Bitcoin had recently gone through another bull run, and Truglia's defense was arguing that he should only have to pay back the value at the time of the theft. Dude must have spent some good money on lawyers because, in the end, the judge made their decision, sentenced Truglia to 18 months, of which he had already served 12, and was told to pay Terpin $20 million in restitution. He got a hell of a deal and was walking away with a ton of money. Terpin was pissed, told Krebs on security, quote, "I am outraged that after nearly 4 years and hundreds of pages of evidence that the best prosecutors could recommend was a plea bargain for a single, relatively minor count of unauthorized use of a Binance exchange account, with all the evidence pointing towards Truglia being one of the 2 masterminds of a wide-ranging criminal conspiracy to steal crypto from me and others." Terpin went on to appeal the decision, but he would also still need to actually get the restitution from Nick, as the court hadn't managed to claw any of it back, which would prove even more difficult in the years to come. In the meantime, Ellis's gesture of goodwill would come back to bite him because on his 18th birthday, Michael gifted him yet another lawsuit. You see, at the time he returned the coins, their value had plummeted to less than $2 million due to a sharp downturn in the market, and Michael was now seeking the monetary equivalent at the time of the theft, plus hefty restitution damages and compensation for potential gains, totaling $71.4 million. This lawsuit actually went public, and 2 weeks after the news broke, 4 armed masked men invaded Pinsky's home, presumably under the false assumption that the teen still had the crypto. Pinsky was expecting something like this to happen. He had previously bought a shotgun for his protection, and in a Rolling Stones article published last year, he recounted how he, his mother, and younger brothers, alerted by their security system, barricaded themselves upstairs with the weapon until the police arrived and stopped the intrusion. This is a growing trend with large crypto holders, home invasions. But anyways, Pinsky, of course, didn't have the money. Come October 2022, he consented to a court judgment requiring him to pay Terpin $22 million in damages on top of what he had already surrendered 3 years prior. Pinsky is now enrolled at New York University, studying computer science and philosophy. He has plans for many different tech startups. His goal is to become a successful tech entrepreneur. It may be the only way he ever pays back Terpin this restitution. Regarding criminal charges, well, he basically got off scot-free. It helps that he was underage during the time of the crime, that it was a one-off attack, that he returned the illicit gains, and of course cooperated with law enforcement. Yet Nick hasn't been so successful at turning his life around. He completed his prison sentence in January 2023, but come May 9, he was arrested again for violating his probation conditions. They found him in possession of 4 fake IDs and a gun. He was again let go, but come February 29, 2024, he was once again in the hot seat. This time, a very rare situation. The judge was holding him in contempt of court all this time later and is even threatening to send him back to jail, despite the US no longer having a debtor's prison. This is because, of course, Nick hasn't paid Michael his $20 million restitution, and the court has rejected his claims that his failure to pay is due to him not having the money. During the hearing, Truglia's defense argued that he genuinely cannot access a digital wallet containing Bitcoin now apparently worth over $100 million. However, prosecutors bit back, saying that he's being dishonest and deceitful, that he's been transferring undisclosed assets and spending money on luxury goods while claiming this inability to pay. Judge Hellerstein expressed agreement with the prosecutors, made it clear he does not find Truglia's claims of being unable to access the funds credible. Quote, "This is not a case of inability to pay. You can sit in jail until you decide to repay Mr. Terpin. I don't believe that you don't have assets." Judge Hellerstein isn't playing around here. He gave Truglia a much lighter sentence up front because of this promise to pay, and now he's living to regret that. The judge set a September 17th, 2024 date for Truglia to return to court and purge that contempt finding. He's gonna have to prove that he can't access the money or pay up, and if he doesn't, he could remain in jail indefinitely for civil contempt. So his story isn't over just yet, and the money is still missing as of today. As for Harry, it seems he got away, kind of. Remember how Plugwalk Joe, that's Joseph O'Connor, called Terpin to tip him off to Ellis? Well, Ellis mentioned to Bloomberg that Harry had an English accent, claimed to live in Spain, and was around his age. This matches up with Joseph to a T, young British kid living in Spain. In June 2023, he was sentenced to 5 years on a slew of other SIM swap crimes, but as far as I can tell, he was never charged with relation to the hack of Terpin. So this is pure conjecture, and according to all public accounts, Ellis has no idea who Harry actually is. It could be someone else entirely. More than a handful of kids from OG users have been arrested over the years, and if you want to hear the story of the first person ever arrested for SIM swapping, well, you can watch my video on screen now.